So one thing we like to do at camp is have campfires and tell stories around the campfire. Of course, at camp in the community, those campfires usually happen during the daytime because we're a day camp, so makes sense. But I'll tell you one of the stories that I enjoy telling. It's a true story. I find that those are sometimes the best stories that you can tell. But this one time, we had this tradition at camp in the community. We didn't actually get to do it last year for a lot of different reasons, but typically at the end of the season we go on a little backpacking trip together, and it's a lot of fun. First year is what I'm going to tell the story about. We went to a little trail called the West Prong. We usually don't do like super long hikes because it's the end of summer, we're kind of tired and we just want to really have fun and relax together as a staff. So the second year, which is not what I'm going to tell the story about, the second year I went, I was 7 months pregnant, and the staff all said, this is a tradition and this is what we do, and I was like, oh my gosh, backpacking, 7 months pregnant, this is not going to be fun. And a lot of aspects of it weren't fun, but we had a really great time, and I'll never forget the memories that we made on that trip either. But the story I'm going to tell is about our first summer, our first backpacking trip, the beginning of this so-called tradition. And so we kind of split things up, and I talked the staff through what we needed to bring, the ones that hadn't been backpacking before, and so forth. And we talked about the weights of things that we needed to bring. And we kind of divided up, and a couple of the guys were going to do all of their tents and foods and split those things up so that they didn't have as much weight to carry. And another of my staff, Stephanie, and I were going to do the same. So that way everyone doesn't have to pack a stove, and everyone doesn't have to pack all the food, and everyone doesn't have to pack a whole tent for themselves. We can just kind of divide things up and split it up, and it helps to reduce the load a lot. And so we did that, and so I was carrying the tent, and Stephanie's job was to bring the food that we were bringing, and then we kind of split up some things with the stove and the fuel and whatnot. Mostly we were planning on cooking up with the fire. So that was really, really good. We got a little bit of a late start on our trip. I know camp folks, sometimes we aren't, especially after camp ends, we don't move too quickly. So by the time we got going, it was probably 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which is not really when you want to start hiking on a backpacking trip, but that's okay. We made do, and we just figured we would pick up the pace and go as quickly as we could and just go ahead and try to get there and not dilly-dally. So we went on our way, and had a really good hike, some great views. The weather was perfect, not too hot, definitely not cold because it's the end of summer, but a little bit warm, which is fine because there's West Prong, there's a river that goes through the middle of the campsites, and so we knew we'd be able to cool off once we got there. So we got there, and usually you want to get your tent set up because other people are going to come in and get set up. You want to get the spots that you want before they're all taken. So Stephanie and I went and set up our tent and found a good place that had minimal roots and looked mostly comfortable. So we got all that set up, and then I was like, well, I'd like to spend some time playing in the river, and then after that we'll get to cooking. We'll just cool off a little bit, even if we're still wet while we're cooking, it's okay. So we went and got in the river, played a little bit. River's maybe a strong word. It's a large creek, or maybe it's a river, I don't know, but small if it's a river. but it's nice and cool. So we cooled off, felt great, hung up our wet outer clothes, our sweaty clothes to dry, so we wouldn't have to wear them wet the next day. And then I was like, okay, I mean, we probably need to go ahead and start, building our fire and getting water and boiling things so that we can go ahead and cook our dinner. And so Steph was like, that sounds great. That's perfect. And we kind of nodded at each other, sort of like this. I was like, okay, we can go ahead and get the food. And she said, food? I thought you were carrying the food. No, we talked about this, and you're the one that was supposed to bring the food. I was bringing the tent, and we were splitting up the pots and pans and stuff. She said, oh yeah, I brought the pot. I have the pot. It's decent size. We can put on the fire, or we can put on the stove, whichever one seems better. Doesn't matter. I was like, okay, well, that's great. We're gonna need that, but we also might need something to put into the pot. And so she kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit, and but at the end of the day, she did not have any of the food that we had planned to bring, and we were getting hungry, and we were going to need to eat something. So I said, okay, just give me the pot. We'll get water. I'll put the water on, and I'll just try to make some stone soup. She said, stone soup, what's that? So just don't worry about it. You didn't bring me the food anyway, so just let me handle the food. So went ahead and put the pot of water on, and put the stone in the bottom, and started heating it up, hoping for the best. So I said, Steph, why don't you just go talk to the guys and see if they have anything extra from what they were bringing to cook. And turns out they were making camper stew, and they had an extra potato and one extra decent sized carrot. So I was like, okay, well, we beggars can't be choosers, so I guess we'll take that. So we worked together, we cut it up into pieces, and we put it into our pot of water. And started to cook, smell okay. And the next thing we did was I said, okay, I mean, we got a couple other girls that are still setting up their tent down there, but maybe they have something, I don't know, worth an ask. Just go check and see. And so Steph went down there to talk to them, and also I can't remember what they were planning on cooking, but they had brought some of those like packets of shredded chicken, and they had one of those that they said they could spare. So none of this really seems to go together, but who cares? So we'll take it. So we took that, we pulled it apart and added it into the pot with our stone, our water, our potato, our carrot, and now our chicken. It was cooking up, and as usual, as the evening progresses, people start arriving. A lot of people, they're hiking longer trails or starting off on a longer journey, will stop by there on their way. And so a couple of hippie-ish looking folks who were getting ready to hike a much longer hike than we were planning to hike stopped by, and they said, oh, what are you making? And I said, oh, stone soup. And they said, oh, that sounds pretty good. We have some extra tomatoes that we could cut up and add to it if you want. I said, sure, go ahead, let's do that. So we cut up the tomatoes, and they said, you mind if we sit and hang out for a while? So we said, sure, of course. It's part of the fun of backpacking and hiking together, is getting to meet new people and just have conversations and hear about where they're from and where they're going. It's kind of fun. So we sat around and kept on cooking, and a couple other folks from their group that had kind of gotten separated came on in, and they were also much later than they had planned on getting there, because they'd been taking pictures of things they saw on the way, and they were going on this longer journey, but it was also their first trip, and so they were enjoying the views and maybe hiked a little slower than they should have, considering. But that's okay, and they came along, and turns out they were planning on making their dinner. We already had a fire set up, so we could let them use part of our fire if they want to. And they said, "What are you guys making for dinner?" And I said, "Oh, well, we are making some stone soup, and so far it has potatoes, carrots, some chicken, a little bit of tomato, and yeah, that's what it's got so far." I said, "Well, we were planning on making some tacos, so we brought some stuff to make tacos with, some peppers, an onion, some squash, and we could just add that to yours, and maybe we could have a little bit of it whenever it's finished." So I asked them if they had any taco seasoning, because that really would make this whole thing taste a lot better. Just, keep pouring some salt on it. At least it'll taste like salt. And they said, "Sure, yeah, we've got that in our little thing of spices." And so they added their spices to our mix, and they added their peppers, their onions, all the things that they had planned on using for their tacos. And since their buddies were here anyway, they just joined us around the fire, and we chatted up about where they were going and where they were from and all those sorts of fun things you talk about with folks out in the woods. And so there wasn't a whole lot more room in the campground, but there was another spot across the river and down a little bit. And so if you've ever been there, there's a log bridge that goes across. It's been there for as long as I can remember. But if you go across that, there's a campsite on the right, and the boys were there. We were on the main side, not too far from the bridge. And then these guys that were coming up the trail, probably going to have to go down across the bridge and to the left, because that was all that was left. A little bit rooty down there, but that's okay. So we saw their flashlights coming from around back, and I said, "This is starting to smell pretty good, and I bet we're pretty close to being able to have something edible for dinner." And so they came up around the corner and said, "Hey, how are you doing?" We talked for a little bit. They said, "That smells pretty good. What are you having for dinner?" Oh, wow. That was the stone, I think. "What are you having for dinner?" We said, "Stone soup. Probably haven't heard of it, but we're hoping that it's going to be good." He said, "Well, it sure smells good." And yeah, so they came in, and they said, "Well, we were planning on cooking our dinner, but looks like you have a pretty good sized amount of stew. We have a few things we could add to it that might make it taste even better if you wanted to add those things." I said, "Sure, what do you have?" And they said they had some zucchini, they had some mushrooms, and seems like they had something else, but I can't remember what it was. But we said, "Sure, yeah, that sounds good. Add that to the mix." Oh yeah, they had some beans, I remember. Just like a can of red beans that they brought with them. So I said, "Yeah, sure, that sounds good. Just add it to the mix, and we'll see what happens." And so we did. We added to the mix, and sure enough, it was actually starting to smell pretty good. And we sat and talked with them for a while, and about half an hour later, we had a pretty good stew on our hands, and it was a good sized pot. So Stephanie and I went ahead and dished ours out, and dished them out to the hippie folks that were on the long trip with their buddies, and the new folks that were coming in that were going to have to hike across the creek to camp, and had enough for them, and then hollered out at our other camp buddies and had enough to share with them, and everybody got seconds of our delicious stone soup. And that is the story of stone soup. So if you are ever out hiking with your buddy and they forget to bring the food along, then all is not lost. Stone soup is a lifesaver.